we're going to be talking about your world as a producer.
Okay.
So, going into lots of different things around it. You've produced ads for the likes of Meta, Peloton, and many more.
Yes, I would say just about most brands and categories I've touched in some way.
That's amazing. So what is the role of a producer? What do you do?
What do I do? That's a great question. I think at large, a producer is really just someone that helps make things, is really how I think about it in my philosophy. I think obviously there's a specific context within advertising or Mojo Supermarket, but I really think that a producer's role is to take different creative visions or dreams or, business objectives and try to find a way to realize those. I think that kind of
And making it happen.
Making it happen. Like, we're just people that like to get shit done, forgive my language. But
That's
I think
okay.
for us, it's really like my friends, I have lots of friends that are producers, and I think producers flock together, and we're always like, we can just kind of do anything. And we only say that amongst ourselves, of course. But ultimately, I think, it's just like, how do you help make things come to life? And how do you kind of help figure out the plan? And I think a lot of times you're not personally doing that. You're bringing together a team of people to do that, or you're finding different people who are really great at something. So it's a lot of, again, sourcing the right people and coming up with the right plan to help make something happen.
And I imagine there's a fairly large spectrum of activity that goes into that across yourself and your team, from logistical bits and pieces, organising locations, all that type of stuff, through to, like, how close does it get to, not art direction, but like the creative element? And like, is that a good assumption that there's a blend of activity?
Oh, for sure. I always say when I'm hiring producers for Mojo that there's like schedule and budget producers, and that everyone that works here, you'll absolutely have to work on a schedule and a budget, but that's kind of low hanging fruit for what it means to be a great producer. And certainly within the ethos of the Mojo production team, it sits very closely with creative. And I think, a lot of that is we're not trying to be the creative or saying that that's, again, like our main contribution. But I think ultimately, if you're helping shape something and trying to make that, you have to kind of understand creatively what it is that you're trying to do. And so I think a lot of creatives, to be honest, there's a lot of friendships that form between producers and creatives for that reason. Because creatives, for instance, one of our incredible GCDs, he showed me a brief yesterday for a documentary, and I was like, oh my God, we have to do this. And we were on a call for it this morning. And I think that kind of synergy between like, this is a really great idea that I have, and now it's like, I trust you as a creative producer to help me figure out what it is we need to do to actually make this.
Yeah.
So for sure there's a lot of alignment, and that's definitely how I run the production team at Mojo.
That's really cool. On that, I'm sure the answer is there's no typical, doesn't exist, but what does a typical team on a production look like for you? Like, who's involved? How does it all come together? What's the team structure?
Yeah, so our Mojo production team is structured with just kind of producers at different levels between associate producer, executive producer, senior producer. And I think as far as the teams that we're partnering with, it really depends a lot on like the medium in which we're producing. So if it's an activation, that might be, sourcing people that are fabricating something or working with a developer for a game, building a microsite. Whereas if it's going to be a film production, then of course that's much more about who are your directors that you're working with, any of the key crew if you're line producing it. So I really think a producer is only as good, though, as the team that they surround themselves with. And I think that relationship part of production is super important. Like, all of us have our, again, like key contacts. So, like, I'm nothing without one of my editors who always helps me save the day. And so I think, forming those really strong relationships with the real doers and production makers is essential.
That's interesting. I guess it's like any team on any project, really, in that, the relationships are key and alignment's key. So what does the time scale on a project look like? So a brief comes in, what's the build up to the shoot like?
Yeah. It really does depend. Again, I'll keep saying that, but I think it just depends on the nature of what we're doing. Sometimes we have clients that have a pretty tight brief and a clear goal, and then we might spend, a few weeks kind of ideating on that, getting alignment, and then hopefully we'll spend 6 to 8 weeks actually making it. Of course, in today's world, I think things are just so much more fluid, where sometimes you're starting to look for directors, but you're still working on what the script is that has to go through testing. So I think the very like assembly line role of an advertising agency is changing, where again, historically it was like client brief, strategy, creative brief, creative development, and then production's the last part of that puzzle.
Okay.
But I think at Mojo, it's not that, again, like linear. Very often producers are involved in the very first meetings because there might already be a limitation as far as timeline goes that we need to make sure that we're advising on that from the get-go.
How have things changed in your career? Because the nature of content, the nature of how advertising is consumed has changed massively. So how has that
For
changed the
sure.
role of a producer?
I mean, in so many ways. I feel like there's like the technological advancements, of course, and then I think, which we can speak to, and then I also think there's just the way that marketing is currently run within the agency model and how our clients' needs have changed, which have necessitated production to change. So to go deeper on that, I think, 25 years ago, let's say, it was like you're maybe making like a very hero, like let's just shoot this one really perfect thing. We're going to drop the film off. We're going to all go out for an amazing dinner, and then we'll, pick it back up once everything's developed. I started my career in like still photography production. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. We're on set, and it's like, let's make selects by the time we leave the shoot so that we can start retouching overnight with our team working in South. Like everything is just so much more expedited, and I think the preciousness sometimes of just that one perfect thing is not quite the same, right? The content isn't going to live in one singular piece of media. And so I think that really does change the game as far as like how can you kind of reinvent the methodology of how you're making things, which really excites me, honestly. I think, again, I know what the old school type ways are, and I think that for me, I get really excited by like how can we like, shake things up and not just do it the way that it's always been done.